maybe moving ourselves along away from the Salah thing, because it's such a divisive topic.
Yeah.
People come out of the woodwork who've sort of always sort of maybe harbored grudges or had bizarre takes, or, you know, notice that they have a platform now for saying that you know, Salah doesn't defend. Well, Salah never defended, so you were quite happy when he was scoring 11 billion goals. It's just it does open up a sort of a can of worms that I have no interest in diving around. And if you want to talk about solutions, one of the obvious things to talk about on a transfer show is who might be added to the mix to improve the situation that we find ourselves in. One of the ones that there's a couple of stories that just won't go away. The two big ones, though, well, 2 to 3 big ones are very interesting. And I heard someone say around the idea of Semenyo, who we'll start with, that, you know, signing Semenyo now is would be wonderful. He's a clearly excellent footballer and might add some directness that we really, really need on the flanks in particular, where we've been less than impressive. One of the things I heard someone say was, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't really address any of the issues that are leading to us losing games. It could only if you're looking at turning games into a basketball match where we outscore. And that's not good for anyone's heart, and it's no way to approach squad building. So in terms of the Semenyo stuff, do you think there's anything to it? Has it got legs? Is it definitely a summer one?
It's absolutely got legs. There's a few journos in this. The suggestion is he does, you know, have that release clause, and who's going to know about his release clause as wrote to Richard Hughes, you know, who's been sporting director at Bournemouth and, you know, been part of that. Absolutely. And trying to dig on this, Trev, all the suggestions are that we're getting is there is a release clause, but it becomes active in the summer coming up. That was part of his renewal, his new deal, so it doesn't come into place till then. And for our info, it's around the 60 million mark coming into play in summer 2026. Now, there's a few things to say on this, because I've seen people go, oh, it's just another forward. And yes, priorities, defenders, progressive defenders, all that, no doubt about it at all. But I think people are missing a trick in terms of saying Semenyo doesn't help us at all. Yes, he does in a certain sense, because when we sold Luis Diaz, we didn't have a left winger, you know, that could just progress the ball, just give it to them and get the ball up the pitch by hook or by crook. Semenyo's physical gifts are insane. He's one of the fastest players in the Premier League, as the speed shows. One of the fastest accelerators, an absolute beast of a player, 2-footed. He wins a lot of aerial battles. And if you look at his defensive stats against other attackers, they're brilliant. So he could really help us. And it's too strong to say this. I'm not saying he's this player, but he is comparable in an element in his physical gifts to Sadio Mane, isn't he? He's probably the closest in the Premier League in terms of those physical gifts. So he could help us in that sense. The big problem is we had a look at him in the summer and we passed it up, didn't we? We chose not to go for it when we sold Luis Diaz. He was one of the ones we looked at. That's come out from various journos and people. The clause is 60 million we're hearing in the summer. Trev, what are Bournemouth going to ask for Semenyo in January if they even do it? They know Liverpool's position. They also will... I mean, look where Bournemouth are in the league. Iraola's got them tearing up trees, hasn't he? So if they were even to consider a bid in January, they're going to whack on such a premium. I mean, it was funny that there's obviously, you know, people play the game, but a few of the Bournemouth journalists put out there that Bournemouth would be looking for £100 million. Now, obviously, no one's going to pay £100 million for Semenyo, but it's them telling you, like, listen, if you want to come for this boy, because you know a lot of you like him, you're going to have to pay a whack-off premium, because actually the way it's going for us in the league and how we're doing, it's probably worth us keeping him till the summer, isn't it? And just riding it out and seeing it that way. So it's one of those. Liverpool like Semenyo. Absolutely. There's multiple journos looked at that. But just when you stack all that up, the chances of a January deal, I think they're like, you're in low percentages, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, And again, if you were going to spend a lot of money in January and do a panic buy, it's not going to be another attacker.
No.
It's just not going to be.
No.
So we either wait for the summer and the release clause to kick in, or that's, I would think that's the only option for Liverpool there that we could possibly see happening. I do think it could happen, actually, depending again on how the rest of the season goes, and perhaps maybe one or two others moving on. We mentioned one already who might be on his bike, and there would be money coming in on the back of that. Iraola was one of the first names being mentioned by all the slot out nut jobs who are coming out of the woodwork immediately after the second loss. Now they have their own little club that meets on a regular basis. And Iraola is one of the favourites, actually, that they have, because that's what you do, isn't it? You just go and you pluck someone because we can be that arrogant. Like, it's remarkable stuff. In terms of other recruits, though, that would be making sense for us, the big one I think that everybody's excited by, and it's not that he would be a Salah replacement, but that there's elements there that could replace certain parts that Mo has offered us at his peak, is Michael Olise. He too has a release clause. I would imagine it's more expensive than the one we just talked about with Semenyo. What do we know about that? Because that was one that's been rumbling around since the summer.
He's funny because Max Sebrell came out and said, like, no, there's no release clause. We want him to sign a new deal. Yeah, they want him to sign a new deal because there is a release clause in that contract and they want to get it out the contract as fast as possible. Because let's be honest, Michael Olise is absolutely tearing up trees for Bayern, isn't he? He's been brilliant this season. He's established in the French national team. He's got Premier League experience. For Liverpool, Michael Olise in the summer is the absolute dream signing, isn't he? Many have mentioned that. You know, if you are going to replace Mo Salah, he's the best you can get. He's a sensational player. There's no doubts about that. The problem is, again, this is the problems stack up. You have to be honest about this. Liverpool are going to need to spend money, and not on attackers right now, aren't they, Trev? That's not the priority, as we said, if you're honest. Even with the release clause, that's going to be big money, and you do wonder that there's not as many sellable assets, is there, as there was in the summer? So, you know, how are you going to balance it all out? Yes, we would love Michael Olise. Of course we would in the summer, you know, for a longer-term planning. And then the other element is, a lot of other clubs would like Michael Olise, wouldn't they? Let's be honest. Chelsea were linked, City are interested. You know, all the big Premier League hitters and other clubs in the world, if Michael Olise is there and has a chance, they would do it. It almost feels, and I'm saying this, that we said it was before the summer window, Liverpool have got aspirational signings, but let's be right, they're not going to get Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak. We'll probably end up 2 or 3 down the list. So this is an absolutely aspirational signing, so you can never write it off anymore. But again, it's just hard to see, isn't it, based on what the team needs right now and what, you know, budgets can be funny, but struggling to see it a little bit.
I mean, you give me a run at the bank balance, and I'm going to try and get Wharton, Baliba, someone like that, maybe both, you know, because they're the profile of player you think could really enhance the squad. And defenders are obviously going to be needed as well, because we kicked the can a little bit with the Robbo situation. And, you know, we've got a flying wing-back type that we signed for biggish money. And, you know, the lad that we've got there, our Northern Irish kid, is not currently at it either. So there may be more plug-and-play people needed in the summer. There is one more that has been mentioned a lot, and that is Mr. Minteh. Seems like one that our backroom nerds are fond of. Seems to profile well from a numbers perspective, Dave.
Yeah, very different to Olise in terms of like output and the style that he is. But yeah, info on this, we mentioned him in the summer. Liverpool have watched him a lot so far this season as well, and they are impressed. The big things that the analysts are calling out from our info is just his sheer work rate. no one averages more sprints per 90 in the Premier League than Yankuba Minteh. So he is gets up and down, works so hard. Let's also be honest, he is absolutely rapid, isn't he? And he does make things happen. It's not that he's, the output's going to be a question, but he is young, he is 21, he is left-footed, plays on the right side, so that comes into the mix. But, yeah, from doing some digging on this, Trev, if there is, and people won't like it, we're just telling you what we're hearing, if there is set to be someone on the right side who comes in, it seems to be more the suggestions we've got are Minteh would likely be well ahead of Olise, despite not what we do necessarily, but that's what we're being told.
It's very interesting. It really is. And obviously, we have to balance this up a little bit because there were two kids at the start of the summer that we were very, very excited and high on, it appeared, in terms of squad involvement. Rio Ngamoa, on his last outing, it just felt an awful lot like you were watching a young kid trying to play in a man's game. He was getting monstered in challenges and stuff like that. And I felt sorry for him, because he had such a head of steam built up, and then almost no involvement, and then you're throwing him on in a hopeless situation, really, or in a bad situation. Trainioni also has featured even less, and yet we saw in pre-season, he seems to be just one of these incredible footballers who can play anywhere, really. There's an awful lot of talk about pathways and progression and all this kind of stuff. Are we seeing the truth of that now, that maybe those things aren't really there? You can be in and around the squad, but I mean, those guys, stack up the minutes. Is it more a feature, do you think, of the fact that things have been so bad that the manager has panicked and wanted to rely on more seasoned pros? Do you think we'd have seen more of them if we were kind of cantering along and winning matches, maybe for 10 or 15 minutes at the end?
And I'm actually, again, from sort of digging around in the info we're getting, it's kind of this time where it's a question of the structure. And what I mean by that is, our info is that obviously Rio Ngamoa coming to Liverpool was seen as a coup, wasn't it? Nicking him off Chelsea, and obviously them banning all our scouts from the training ground, which was quite funny. But the people that Arne Slot wasn't really involved in that. It was more Richard Hughes and people behind the scenes. And it's that word, as you said, selling the likes of Trev, selling the likes of Rio Ngamoa. There's a pathway for you here to play first team football. This is what it is for you, to their families, to the players, and that's what it is. The big thing about that, though, is Arne Slot rates these players. He has them around the first team, but genuinely the info we're getting is part of that is because you have to remember Richard Hughes is his boss, Trev, isn't it? That doesn't mean he doesn't rate the two youngsters, but it's obviously in terms of we've got to get these players around it because it shows a pathway. And if we're going to attract top youngsters, absolutely, you've got to show that. But at the same time, as you said, I mean, no disrespect to him because he came on Saturday, but Michael Coyote ragdolled him, didn't he? He absolutely bullied him for the minutes. He looked like a kid playing an adult game, basically. He didn't look ready. That doesn't mean he's not talented. We've seen that. The potential's there. But right now, and I think Arne Slot realises that as well, and this is also sounds bad, but is it not telling that Arne Slot, who really is quite clear, doesn't really fancy Federico Chiesa, still is often picking Chiesa ahead of Ngamoa at the moment, isn't it? That tells its own story. So, yeah, it's, again, all the things we're digging on, I'm not saying it's happy stories that we're getting, but the big things that are coming out for these two kids are that it's a little bit of Richard Hughes and the backroom staff, the Soups have sold them, and I understand this, the pathway and how it could work, but that's not translating to minutes under Arne Slot right now, isn't it? And you do wonder, Arne Slot's been quite happy all summer to send the kids away, hasn't he? Like McConnell, go on loan. All these youngsters, Jayden Dans, go on loan. I want senior stars. This is what I work with. And you just wonder a little bit, I wouldn't even like to bet how many minutes Rio Ngamoa ends up playing this season. And the reason I'm saying this, people will go, it's nothing. We were told, weren't we, by journalists repeatedly all summer, Liverpool didn't want to sign another left winger because they didn't want to block the pathway for Rio and Gamoa. Well, now, Cody Gakpo's been stinking half the season, really, if we're honest, and Rio's got minimal minutes. So you can't really balance the equation there, can you?
Not at all. Not at all. And there's no indicator that it's going to change anytime soon. It's funny to watch comments, threads descend into bad-mannered sort of attacks on each other. Everybody gets grumpy when there's been a few losses. Yeah. It is possible to talk about this stuff without everybody's tempers fraying. You kind of have to remember it's only football. There are extenuating circumstances for all of this. I think what it comes down to for me, David, just to derail us for a second off the back of the chat about the kids is, unless I'm mistaken, it's a 7-point gap to Arsenal at the top now. That's right, isn't it? And their goal difference is so much better that it might as well be 8, which means we're looking at a 3-win swing. And so the question you have to ask yourself, because I'm not really arsed about talking about qualifying for the Champions League, even if that is a thing. I don't want to start talking about it yet. I'm one of those idiots who would rather keep focusing on doing things right and maybe getting these boys playing. Like, why is there not a world where Alexander Isak starts scoring for fun? Why is there not a world where the manager settles on some sort of defensive structure that can actually function in a way that gets us through games? That those things can't be beyond us. If you're thinking they're beyond it, you might feel like they might be beyond it. We all have a good feeling that something is awry. I think we all do in our heart parts of feeling that like something's not right here. But objectively speaking, it has to be possible to look at it and say, right, a 3-win turnaround. One of those is in our hands because we play Arsenal. Is it possible that we could have 2 weekends where we win and they lose? Is that possible? Well, it really depends on Arsenal, doesn't it? So that's kind of out of your control as well. So I can understand why people, I think, even subconsciously are getting a bit ratty because it just feels like it's slipping away, having been in such a good position, maybe a false position at the start of the campaign. You can see, though, why it is sort of causing so much anxiety. And if we thought our situation was bad, at least we're not Harvey Elliott, eh? I mean, what is happening to that poor kid? It's shocking, isn't it? I really feel for him because I think everyone loves Harvey. Loads of people thought it was silly to sell him because he's such a talented kid. It didn't make sense to people, but then they're obviously not watching how little contribution he was allowed to make under Arne Slot either. But it's a sad situation. Is there any twist on that? Because people are always starting to talk because, panic breeds panic about buyout clauses and sellbacks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I messaged you, didn't I, about this, just saying just keep an eye on what we're being told. And people have almost started to cotton on because when Harvey Elliott went to Aston Villa, you forgot, the initial demand was Liverpool wanting 50 million, weren't they, after, a sensational Euro Under-21 tournament where he was doing brilliant there. And then, Villa, and then it was a 35 million obligation. That seems low. And then you heard that, because it kicks in a season, but we've got a sell-on clause and all those types of things as well. Thinking, okay, that's not bad business. Quite a few are saying just keep an eye on this for the worst possible reasons because he's being left out the squad now with Villa, isn't he? Not on the bench, out the squad completely. And Villa have just won 4 on the spin in the league. So they're starting to get into a bit of form as well, with Harvey Elliott not involved at all. The key detail for this is, for Harvey Elliott's obligation to be triggered, as David Ornstein reported, 10 appearances have got to be achieved, which sounds low, doesn't it? It doesn't sound like much, Trev. But there's a few just saying, just keep an eye on this, because Villa are seriously thinking, do we really want to, with our PSR issues and the other things we're looking at as well, want to be spending 35 million on a guy that's not even getting in the squad at all? So, honestly, there was even one guy who, as you know, gives us good info, was saying that there's even been talk that Villa might look to try and, negate this contract and say to Liverpool, is there any way around it type of thing, because they don't want to spend the 35 million. This is tragic, isn't it? Harvey Elliott, maybe we're questioning if he'll make 10 appearances for Aston Villa. As you said, if you think Liverpool have got it bad, feel for that kid who made the move to Aston Villa on the basis that that was where he thought he would have the best chance of getting in the England World Cup squad, for the summer as well. Look at how badly that's gone.
Yeah, and he had choices, Dave. He had choices.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned there that Emery takes a while to introduce players into the squad. You'd like to see him though on the bench at least. It is not going well for the kid for sure.